welcome to another meeting with the Investing Education Academy. I'm Brent Simpson. I'm with Leon Noble, and we are both co-founders of Investing Education Academy. It's a platform designed to help educate people on the stock market, cryptocurrency, real estate investing, and other types of investing. Our goal is to demystify the investing world as a whole to narrow the wealth gap between the have and the have-nots. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody. We have one more live before the end of the year, and you all have been fantastic. I think we're somewhere north of 30,000 downloads of our podcast for the year. So that's awesome. And I mean, it's really a testament to you all sharing the information, going to visit the podcast. And for those of you all who maybe listen to the podcast right now, thank you. For those of you all who might be watching us live and you're thinking, I didn't know you had a podcast. It is www.ieapodcast.com. And today we're going to talk about something that is very close to home for many of you all. And if you are doing something with the family right now, call them over, turn it up, cast it to your television. If you're in the car, turn up the radio. We had one of our Investing Education Academy members recently hired us to speak to their family as a gift to their family this year. They gave the gift of financial literacy. And so Leon and I were able to talk to multi-generations at one time about money, how it affects the other generations. And we thought we would bring that lesson kind of to a lesser degree, but still bring some of that information to you all today, more so focusing on the importance of why you should be talking to parents, kids, yourself, your spouse, cousins, nephews, just your family in general about money. And Leon, if you can tell them some of the importance of that while I do some housekeeping.
Yeah. So, a lot of us, especially in our generation, so Brent and I are 45, I think we're just outside of the millennials. So in our generation, it's my family's from the Caribbean, from first generation American. And Brent's, as I always tell you, diehard DC, born and raised. And whether it's, my parents are from overseas, Brent's parents are from the United States, especially and we can only speak for kind of us in our community, especially in the Black community. Money isn't talked about, especially with your parents, right? And parents, and definitely not your grandparents, but your parents never talk about their salary. They never talk about how much money they make. They never talk about, car notes and insurance payments. Like, this money thing is just never really talked about. And it's really sad that that's the case. And we're trying to, we actually want to help break that, because, and as Brent said yesterday on the call, on the meeting you did with the family, what our parents do, and maybe even extend to our grandparents, depending on who's raising us. But whoever our guardian is who raised us, and we kind of see how they move with money, that's going to affect us, right? So if we don't see them investing, we see them only putting their money in a savings account. If we never see them talking about the stock market, we never see them talking about, we're not fans of them, but even things like CDs or money market, just things about money are never talked about. It's never passed on to the next generation. And I know for a fact, like growing up, talking about money directly with my parents was never a thing, right? I kind of learned about money through my parents, kind of like through osmosis, right? I just kind of saw how they moved. And my parents actually did invest in things that I did see. They invested in real estate. They invested in the stock market. So I saw a lot of that, right? So, but it was never talked about to me. I would love for them to actually have talked to me about it directly, but I did learn. But there are some kids out here and individuals out here whose parents are not investing at all, right? They're just putting their money in a savings account, putting it on the mattress, and that's just going to be passed on down to their kids, and their kids are never going to actually learn how to invest money. So, so we really love the IA member the other day. He's giving gifts of financial literacy by had us come in and talk to, as Brent said, multi-generations. There were parents, I believe parents, maybe grandparents, but definitely parents and children, at least two generations, to see that they're and what's really cool is, like, we think, we're quote unquote young relative to our parents and our grandparents, but the parents and the grandparents that are older than us, they still want to learn from us, right? Because they look at it like, they were never taught about the stock market. They have no idea what this thing called cryptocurrency is. They have no idea, what Microsoft does or what Amazon does. actually they just hear about these things and get packaged at the door, but they don't see how they can actually benefit financially from these things. So it's really cool. It's really cool to see that that the older generation actually looks to us to actually teach them, and that's kind of what we did last night. We actually want to start doing more of that with more of our members. We would love for we're trying to get this message of whatever you learn from us, whatever you learn out there in the world, pass it on to your family, your parents, not just your kids, but your parents, your grandparents, and anybody else in your family.
The information. So today we want to challenge, let's put out the IEA challenge. Can you talk to your parents and children during this Christmas holiday? Ask them, do they have an estate plan? And so here's a list of some things you want to know about your parents. Do they have retirement savings? Do they have an estate plan done? Do they have a will? Do they have any businesses maybe you don't know about? Do they have a safe deposit box maybe you didn't know about? And this may sound funny, but it's true. I hope you all are writing this down. Do you have any cash hidden in the house that no one knows about?
And do you have a stock portfolio?
Mm-hmm. And you want to have. Do you have life insurance? Who are the cars noted to in case something happens to you? Do you have power of attorney? These are all things that you should absolutely be asking your parents. Do you have long-term care? If it was a situation where burial was needed, do you have a plan? Is there a special thing you want done for burial? Do you have money for it put away? All these things are very important to ask your parents. And let me switch it. Parents, for your children. Oh, Leon, is there anything I missed on that list?
No, you were good.
Okay. So for parents, these are some things you want to ask your children. What do you know about growing money? Now, notice I didn't say, what do you know about money? What do you know about growing money? That's what's important. A lot of kids know about money. They know what it's used for, but they don't know the importance of money. Then you want to also ask children, do they understand that money won't make you happy? Money gives you freedom to make choices that will make you happy. Do you know what mommy and daddy do? Do you know what mommy and daddy does with their money? These are questions, again, you should be asking your children. If you had, let's say, a significant amount of money, what would you do? Ask your children that. And I know some of you all are under the belief that your children somehow are going to just give the right answers. And you might be shocked when they say, I want to buy this video game that I've been looking at for quite some time. And you're thinking like, oh, like what? I thought you were going to say save it or, this. Also, for your kid, when the kids give you these answers, it's no wrong answer on their part. It's just an opportunity for you to educate. And I'll say this. If you don't know what you feel like, again, no right answer, but you want to be in the right direction. So if your kid's like, oh, put it in the bank, that is not the right answer. Leon yesterday, he doesn't have the chart. Unfortunately, today we're just talking to you all. But this is like one of the most important conversations that we're going to do with you. Because Leon presented a chart that compared, you want to tell him about it, Leon?
Yeah, so it was a chart that that compared and actually you can actually take a look at it if you go to our Instagram. The two are there. So basically, it's showing. One of them shows how much money, if invested in a savings account over the last 10 years, at the average interest rate in a savings account. The average interest rate in a savings account over the last 10 years was 0.13%. So it shows you how much $10,000 would have grown over that 10 years based on that interest rate. Then it contrasts that with that same $10,000 invested in the stock market, and the stock market has returned on average 10% per year for the past 200 years, and it was a dramatic difference. I'll give you the numbers. So the savings account with a 0.13% interest rate over the last 10 years grew from $10,000 to $10,130 for a 1.3% gain over 10 years. That's not per year. That's in 10 years. 1.3% over 10 years. Now, the one that was invested in the stock market over the same 10 years, that $10,000 grew from $10,000 to over, it's like $25,900.
$25,000, yeah.
Yeah, it was over $25,000 for 159% return over 10 years. So this is the huge, and this again is why we always harp on, you got to get your investment dollars out of savings accounts and into the stock market, because again, that is a perfect example of how over the last 10 years, if you weren't in the market, your money was sitting in a savings account, you missed out on a huge return the last 10 years. And again, these are things we want to bring to our parents, things we want to bring to our kids, if you have any nephews, cousins, aunts and uncles, whatever, because having this knowledge for ourselves in a vacuum doesn't do our community any good. So that's why we really enjoyed yesterday sharing this information with the IEA members' family of about 2 generations. And again, don't like I said, don't be afraid to talk to like older folks in our family about these things, because again, you'll be surprised. They actually want to learn from us on these things, about these things, because they just don't know. A lot of them were not brought up with this.
And for those who were brought up in the right way, they get to educate us, and they want to share their knowledge. They want to be valuable, but sometimes they don't know how it would be received. So we gave you questions to ask for your parents. We gave you questions to ask your children. Now, this is going to be a specific group of you all. So if you want to share this, and you want to go back and listen to those questions, and listen to them with your kids. Listen to this again with your parents. And so it's not you saying it, it's them. Blame it on us. Like, they said these were good questions, so let's run through it. And if you're just tuning in, share this with somebody in your family, because we're talking about family right now. And if you're just tuning in, you're like, I want to know what questions to ask my parents. When this is done, you can go to IEApodcast.com, listen to the podcast, or you can just run back this on our YouTube station, this particular episode. But the questions you want to ask if you are dating with the intent to get married, okay? Dating with the intent to get married. You ready? Okay, cool. I see the numbers popping up. So the numbers are going up right now, like, oh, people are sharing this. So what is your relationship with money? You want to ask the person that you believe that you might marry that question. What do you think the future is going to look like for you and us if we were together? If we were to take that walk and, jump the broom, who would manage the money? What would be our responsibilities as it relates to money? Do you believe in life insurance? Do you want investment property? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you believe in estate planning? These questions are very important, and I'm going to explain a little bit of why. If you're talking about, taking that walk with somebody who's an entrepreneur, that's a very rough lifestyle for a period of time, undetermined period of time. It is rough. And that might mean that you're going to have to be the breadwinner. And okay, what's the big deal? The big deal is if you don't talk about it, and all of a sudden, you do get married and that person quits or gets frustrated at work and comes home and like, it's over, I'm about to start this company, and that company has no revenue in the beginning, you might be sitting there like, where did this come from? It came from the fact that you never talked about this stuff. If you all of a sudden, end up in a relationship and you come home one day and somebody just bought $30,000 worth of purses, and you're thinking, why would you spend $30,000 on purses? They've always done it. You just never talked about it.
And we got $30,000 on purses to resell them, not just to have sitting in their closet.
Yeah. And so you want to know these things, like what is their relationship with material items? What is their relationship with deferred gratification? Some people really don't know deferred gratification. And again, fun fact, children that learn the importance of deferred gratification before the age, I think it's like 6, have a like 29 to 36, 37% chance of being more wealthy than those that don't. There's different ways to teach your kids deferred gratification. For me, what I did when my kids were like 2, 3 years old, I would leave cookies at eye level on tables, and they would come and like go to grab a cookie, and I would say, wait, before you grab a cookie, when I knew they could reach it, right? So their instinct was cookie, grab it, put it in my mouth. And I was like, wait, if you get that cookie now, we're going to watch a movie later on, and those are cookies for your movie. So if you eat them, you won't have any cookies for your movie. It seems so simple, right? But then what will happen is we would start watching a movie, and I would take out my 3 cookies, and I would eat them so slow, and I make them look delicious. And it seemed funny. We're laughing. You're like, it's crazy. But it taught my kids that if you just went ahead and gobbled it all down, you wouldn't have it later on when you really wanted it for the movie in this situation. But they did learn deferred gratification. They talk about it. I mean, I've done lives with my daughter at age 4, and she was talking about deferred gratification and how important it was. But we're not having these conversations. So for those of you all who are married, and now the money is mixed, you want to ask a couple questions. Do you have any money set aside or hidden? I'm sorry. I know this is getting a little touchy. Some people married like, who's this dude? Like,
hey, it's real though. I mean, it's legit. It's real.
It's a lot of people who have money from their spouses, and of course, the thought is that's counterintuitive. If I hid it, I clearly don't want them to know. But sometimes simply just asking a question will bring it to fruition, because maybe it's not hidden. Maybe it was just never talked about. And because of that, I'll give a scenario. Like when my wife and I first met, my wife is was an avid bank saver. Like she believed in savings accounts. That's where she saved her money. And when we met, we had that conversation. What is your relationship with money? And she was like, I work for it. It is mine to have when I retire, and I don't want to risk it at all. So what that told me was she was risk averse. She didn't want to risk money. Me, on the other hand, I was in the stock market. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I would invest in anything that I felt like had the possibility of a good return. And sometimes I was a bit reckless. And she needed to know that, because that's who I was. That was who she was marrying. But when we had that conversation, I became a little bit less risky. Like I wasn't just such a wild card when it came to investing, but she became less risk averse. So she moved her money into the market. But we also realized there's a part of me that's always just going to be more less risk averse than her. So we have separate accounts too. And in our separate accounts, we can do whatever we want. Like that's your money, do whatever you want. This is your money, do whatever you want. We have money that grows together, and then we have money to pay bills. But that happened after a conversation. And I have personally met couples, and Leon, you probably can attest to this, that one of them is very stylish and loves to spend money. The other one is super frugal and gets irritated to their soul when they see their spouse show up with new stuff when they didn't need it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely.
I have been in a meeting once where a person told me that, and that's why I said the $30,000, their spouse went out and spent $30,000 on shoes and one shopping spree. And this individual was livid. And, the thought was like, why would they do that? And the reality was that's who they married from the beginning. Right. That was that person's disposition. It just hurt a little differently because it included their money now. Mm-hmm. And they never had that conversation to say, okay, that was cool then, but we're trying to build towards something different here. Families have to talk about money. And, vice versa. It was a couple who were super frugal. I think they're both school teachers, and they both had the exact same thought of money. They weren't trying to risk it, but they did realize they needed to, get a better return than the banks. They're both school teachers. They're our age, 45. And at this point, they're probably sitting on a little over $500,000 because they didn't go straight to the stock market, but they did look for investment opportunities in real estate and other items when they came about. But they knew they were headed on that path, and they knew they were going to have a modest income because they talked about it. And so Leon and I wanted to bring this to you. When we had the meeting yesterday, we saw some of the family members' brows go up, like when we talked about how the interest rates really have done nothing in banks. Oh, actually went down. It was down significantly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rates, just real quick. So rates started out in 2010. Interest rate, savings account interest rates were about 0.21%. 0.21%. Today, the average interest rate is 0.06. So, I mean, That right there tells you. I mean, it went from nothing to almost zero. I mean, it was basically nothing, at 0.2%. Now it's literally almost zero. So yeah, interest rates have plummeted the last 10 years in savings accounts. And again, the savings account the money that was in the savings account, $10,000, grew to $10,130 in 10 years. The one that's in the stock market grew from $10,000 to $25,000 in the same 10-year period.
And during that conversation, we're going to get into, now we're going to talk about the multi-generational side of this. Some of you all out there are about Leon and I's age. We'll take us off the table. Let's just say some of you all are between the ages of 32 and 53, 54, 55. 32 to 55. Let's take that range. And some of you all, not all of you all, and please check with your friends, share this with your family. If I'm wrong, send us a message and be like, you're wrong. I'm guessing some of you all firmly believe that your money is your money. Period. It's not your kids' money. It's not your parents' money if you have kids, if your parents are still with us. And that thought is wrong. And I'm telling you, for a large percent of you all, you may be like, if your parents were destitute, you step over them and keep walking. I hope that's not true, but I'm sure somebody's out there who would do that. But the reality that I have seen is kids go through life. They spend all of their time saving, making sure their nest egg is available. A parent gets sick, and that parent does not have long-term care, has not been saving, has been spending their 401k like it's just water that they just pouring onto a plant. And the kids have never talked to them about it. So when that parent gets sick, there's no money to take care of that parent. And the kids, that whole guilt thing kicks in. You're not going to let your parent just sit there and waste away. So you start slowly bleeding out your retirement. You start slowly bleeding out all the savings that you had. You start liquidating your investments because you want to take care of this parent who you feel like you owe your life to. But because you never had a conversation between that 32-55 space, there was no chance to course correct. There was no chance to course correct and say, you know what? You really need to get long-term care. Because for anybody who's watching this, let's throw out some numbers. Long-term care in the DC and many metropolitan areas can be anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month. I'll say it again. $5,000, $10,000 for memory care, assisted living, or in-home care for your parents. And if you could write that check, cool. But if you could write that check, you probably could have wrote a check for long-term care, which might be anywhere between $400 and $900 a month. And $400, $900, $1,000 may seem like a lot until you have to write a check for $5,000. And I've seen families have to write that check for $5,000. I've seen families have to write a check for $9,000. I've heard stories of families writing checks for like $13,000. And so in that, again, we're telling you all this because it's important to have this conversation. If you can help your parents course correct, and maybe they've been spending their retirement money because they think, I can't take it with me, I'm just going to spend it. In their mind, they've always wanted to give money to the grandkids. In reality, they've never thought about how that's going to happen. So maybe they could have not spent all of it, taken out a modest life insurance policy, and leave $50,000 to each of your kids. Now let's talk this. We're talking multi-generational, right? So what does that mean multi-generationally? That means that your grandparents, we will all die. Your parents, your children's grandparents, they pass away. $50,000 jumps over to your kids. And your kids, hopefully they're very young. And going back to Leon's example of the stock market, if they are able to invest that money, that may pay their school tuition. It may be the money for their first home. It could be the money to allow them to help you later in life. Because if that money grows properly, they can use it for all those things and still have some left over. So now with proper planning, it's actually part of your plan. So it's a little selfish, but it's okay.
But it's reality. I mean, it's reality. And I just want one point is something that we all see in the news a lot, is that when you hear about people who have passed away, maybe suddenly, you see it on Facebook, you see it on the news. Anytime you hear that a family, let me not say every time, but typically, when you hear families that have loved ones that have passed away, and you hear that the family or a friend of the family is starting a GoFundMe for that family, typically that family has no plan in place for the death of a loved one. Funerals are expensive. I mean, they're crazy expensive. It's a huge cost to the kids. If the parents haven't, they don't have life insurance, if they don't have some sort of money set aside for their once they pass away, it's a huge liability on the kids. So like Brent said, these are conversations that are hard to have with their parents about them dying, but it's real, right? I mean, we're all gonna die at some point. So these are conversations you want to have with your parents so that you don't have to go out here and start a GoFundMe that you're just hoping the public will give you some X amount of dollars. You end up raising, say, $500, and you still have to come up with another 10,000, right? Whereas if you had a plan in place, life insurance or some other kind of death insurance, you'd be a lot better off. But again, having that conversation with your parents now or your grandparents now is the important part.
Yeah. And I mean, policy-wise, there are a lot of creative things you can do with life insurance. You can do second to die policies, high early cash value, term life insurance, whole life insurance. You can do a IUL, a VUL, and if you don't know what these things are, contact us and we'll educate you on it. If you're an IA member, you can go to the life insurance section in our portal and you can look at some of the information. But again, these are things that will affect you later in life. And I've had this happen. I've seen this happen. I've been a part of this. A parent who didn't trust banks, didn't trust the system, kept all their money. It was like $275,000 in a duffel bag in a car trunk of a broken down car in a horribly dilapidated garage. Who in the world would have looked in that trunk? If something happened to him, I'm 99.9% sure the family would have just towed the car away.
They would have towed the car away, and somebody at a junkyard would have came up on $275,000 for a worthless car.
Yeah. But they never talk. And again, another scenario: a parent had a safe deposit box, and when we sat down, I asked the hard questions like, what do you have any money that no one knows about? Do you have a safe deposit box? And it turned out this parent had a safe deposit box. Safe deposit box key, check this out, was in a change bucket or jar with all the keys that this parent had, like every house they've ever owned, all the cars they've gotten rid of. It was just a key amongst a kingdom of keys. Nobody in their mind would have thought this key is
nobody even thought to look in there for the key.
I know you would have saw the keys, but it's impossible to. Well, maybe it's possible. It's always possible.
It's always possible.
Highly, highly unlikely that anybody would have sifted through all those keys. You're talking like 80 years of life worth of keys, and pulled out that one key and known it was for a safe deposit box.
Did they say how much money was in the safe deposit?
No, we never had. It was actually some forms. It was some bonds and stuff. But again, who would have checked? And so these are things that come out when you meet with an estate planning attorney. These are things that come out when you meet with your financial advisor. If you're an IAA or listening to IAA, it's coming out because you're listening right now. For your children should know how you want to be buried. Your children should know how you invest when you're at work. Your children should know how much money you make. Why not tell them? Because it's taboo? Because we normally don't talk about it? Why? And then our kids grow up ignorant. They don't really know. They don't know what salaries to look for or to negotiate when they get their first job because they never talked about salary with anybody. They went through, let's say, 50 years of living. Well, not 20 years of living with you. And they never had a conversation about how much you make it work, how much other people make at your job, how much you make as an entrepreneur, what you do with the money you make, how much you've lost.
How do you invest? If you invest.
Mm-hmm. These are all very important questions and conversations to have with your children. Because now, and I'll give you another scenario. It was two children, first cousins, and that means that their parents were siblings. The siblings had intent, or one sibling had the intent to be buried with the other sibling. The other sibling was like, they're being cremated. Both of the first cousins had no idea what either one of them wanted. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, they didn't know what both of them wanted, but each of the cousins thought they knew what the one parent wanted. It became a complete disaster when we started having that conversation about what's going to happen when people pass away. I'll say this: in the end, there was such relief, so much clarity for the children, because they now knew what their family wanted, and they were able to start preparing documents to support what they wanted. Because that's the other thing. People think, oh, if I get sick and go to the hospital, my kids will just show up and take care of me. Do they have a durable medical power of attorney? I don't know. Do you know? Do you know what that is?
Yeah, but say, do you even know what that is? Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you know you need to have that to go check medical records? And a lot of these kids, again, another thing is actually, I think it might be a federal offense, but people don't know. If a parent dies and you have the codes to their bank accounts and you just keep paying bills until everything gets settled, that's actually illegal. You can't just go into the account because you have codes and pay things with their money. So if that case goes to probate and somebody contests it and they say you stole money, what happens then? What happens next? Did you steal money? You thought you didn't because it was your parent and you had the codes. Did your parent give you authority to use those codes? If they passed away, it's a good chance they didn't, because we're not meeting with professionals like estate planning attorneys to get these things professionally done so we don't get in trouble. Mm-hmm. So just understand, it's real. Again, even yesterday, talking to this family, and I'm gonna keep saying that the brows going up like, oh, I never thought to talk to my 5-year-old about life insurance. Do you have life insurance on your 5-year-old? In many minority communities, people think that's a bad omen or you're wishing death on your children. No. What that means is, if you get the right amount of life insurance coverage on your kids when they're young, when they turn 45, they could be sitting on over $500,000 in the account, in their life insurance account, and have about $600,000 or $700,000 in coverage. So what does that mean for you? That means you just left, by way of your children, you just left over $500,000 to your grandkids. So now you can't go pour the money out as if it's not there, because you've covered yourself in life insurance, so you don't need the actual asset of cash. If done properly. Done properly,
right. Mm-hmm.
So, Leon and I just wanted to talk to you all today. We're going into the end of the year. The average family out there, parents are spending anywhere from $500 to $1,200 on kids for Christmas gifts, when a lot of times, I'm going to put Leon in this category. This is me. I personally believe a lot of the gifts the parents give has nothing to do with the kid. It's the parent wants to feel like they are the hero, that they provided this thing to the kid that made them smile. And I'm not saying everything. I'm just saying some things. And in some of those things, oh, thank you. Someone just said they love the red shirts. We'll keep wearing them. So, in that space, you really just, if you maybe didn't get like 20 smiles, but you got like 5 smiles, because the kids won't appreciate you investing their money. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not. No one's.
They won't appreciate it. They won't appreciate it now. They'll appreciate it in 20 years.
And that's what we talked about yesterday during the meeting. Yep. Most kids, if you gave them a really big box and some tape, they would go to town. Like, go to town. And for us, we're like, well, the box is just what the prize is, what the gift is inside. But the kid is perfectly happy with the box. Mm-hmm. But we want to feel like we provided, we did what we were supposed to do. We provided we fell into social norms. And social norms say the parents that give the kids the most gifts, love them the most, are the most successful. It's good to spoil them just for this one time a year. But what happens when they turn 20 and they want to buy a house, but they have to go get an apartment because nobody ever saved for them to be able to buy a house?
And also, it doesn't have to be. So I always get this question in stock markets, like, should I buy Nike or should I buy Microsoft? And I always say, or should I buy, this crypto and this stock? My answer is always do both, right? It doesn't have to be either or. So you can buy your kids gifts. We're not saying don't buy your kids gifts. Everyone wants to see their kids smile. So you can buy them gifts, but also, if you're going to spend $100, $200, $500 on your kids, maybe take a third of that, buy the gifts, and put the rest in the stock market. Put the rest into some bonds. We're not big on bonds, but again, it's better than nothing. But basically invest some of that money for your kid's future, and don't just put it in the Nikes or the newest toy, or even the newest experience. all of it. Do some of it. Do some gift experience and then some investing, because your kids will thank you 20, 30 years down the line. Well, they don't have to go get a loan to buy a car, or they don't have to dip into start saving half of their check every pay period to put a down payment on a house, right? They can just pull it out of their the saving that you had for them from when they were younger. So just think about the future gifts you can give to your kids, today.
And I've heard people say, "Oh, they're just a trust fund baby," as if it's a bad thing. I can tell you right now, my kids are going to be trust fund babies. And when my kid is doing something your kid can't do, they earned it because they didn't get probably all the fun stuff earlier in life. And I know some people are, in a position where money is hard. We're in a very hard economy right now. So we're not saying go take all your money, liquidate everything. We're saying for those of you all who are going to get an excessive amount of gifts, we're saying for those of you who get a text every so often, the text comes in and it's a family member saying, "What does your child want for Christmas?" Reply back, "Can you give to their investment account?"
Right.
Reply back, "Can you gift some stock?" Or, appreciated artwork. Can you, whatever it might be, just think outside the box.
And think about a long-term investment, not just instant gratification today.
Yeah. And get them a book. Get them a book on something that teaches them about money. Get somebody a subscription to Invest in Education Academy. Got to do a plug.
Right. PSA plug.
Yeah. Yesterday when we did do the conversation for the family, the individual who asked us to do it bought 8 subscriptions to Invest in Education Academy for their family. That's the gift of education. Now, we're definitely very pleased because it was to our company. But at the same time, Leon and I really do this because we want our ecosystem to win. We want to narrow that wealth gap. And also, we don't want people to feel bad when they see trust fund babies anymore. They should think, like, give them a high five. Like, that's awesome. We get mad when we hear about these kids who finish college and they go travel to find themselves for a year. But how many confused adults do you see out there who don't know who they are because they never took the time to go find themselves?
Because they couldn't afford it.
They couldn't afford it. I had to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go to work because your parents never talked about money and you never were able to develop a plan because it just wasn't something anybody took the time to do. Yep. So, today we hope that you take the time. The holidays coming up. That's why Leon and I thought this message was very timely. You're going to be around your family and just say it. Just yell it out. Hey, does anybody here have a estate plan? Out of curiosity, when we're about to cut this turkey or sit at this table to eat, has anybody here upgraded their life insurance since buying a new asset?
And if you don't necessarily have that conversation now with your family, which we would hope you could, but if not, at least make it a goal for next year to say, okay, I'm going to talk to my parents. I'm going to talk to my grandparents. I'm going to talk to my kids. I'm going to make it like a New Year's resolution to have a conversation with my family about money, and make that kind of a New Year's resolution outside of just the normal gym thing and becoming a millionaire. Actually, talk to your parents, talk to your family about money.
Yeah, and we see you all on YouTube, so thank you for sending us messages on YouTube. And for everybody who's going to spend that time with their family, ask them those questions. Ask them, what is the plan if something were to happen to you, mom, dad? For your kids, ask them, what do you think mommy and daddy do with their money? And I know some of us are addicted to cars. Every time we get a little bit of a raise at work, we go buy a new car. Mm-hmm. And I know some families it is ripping apart right now. So just understand your relationship with money and how you talk to your kids about money is going to determine their financial future. Their financial future will determine the freedom that they have in the United States of America, because whether we like it or not, it's a capitalistic society and money gives us options on how we want to live. And that is just a hard truth. And I know there are some very educated people who listen to our podcast. They have never just even thought about talking to their children about money because they're just children. And if that's your thought, you're putting your kid into a losing position.
Mm-hmm. You're setting your kid up for failure.
And I was trying not to say that, right? But it's very real. And I talk to my kids. frequently. I still let them be kids, but they do understand money as much as a 5 and a 9-year-old could. They know how much I make. They know how much they have in their brokerage accounts. They know how money should or could grow, and they know they're going to take some L's, and they're already mentally preparing for that. So that was it for me. Did I miss anything, Leon?
No, I think it was it. If you cover the bases, we just again want to make this point about end of the year. You're going to be with family. If you can have those conversations now with your family about money, great. If not, just make it a New Year's resolution to have that conversation with your family about money next year, because it's very, very important.
Yeah, and if you're a new couple or newly married and you're young, you're in your 20s, late 20s, or you're in your 20s or 30s, it is very important that you talk to your spouse about what their parents do. I'm gonna say that again. If you are a new couple, 20s, 30s, it is absolutely important that you talk to your spouse about what their parents have planned for their retirement. Because again, if their parents fail, all of a sudden, all the money you saved and you did all the things you have to do to get goes out the window because your spouse's parents had no plan. And if you had talked about it in your 20s or 30s, that's hopefully a significant amount of years that you all can put energy into helping them correct that problem. And that means that you all don't have to all of a sudden become destitute or maybe divorced because you're not willing to take on their family's financial issues that could have been resolved if you just talked about it. So everybody, thank you for being with us. I mean, if you do have some questions for Leon and I about like, well, what else can we be doing? Reach out to us. We'll be happy to give what we can. If you're looking at IEA membership, we are still running our end of the year sale on membership. That will probably be ending very soon. And again, like we said before, you might not see these numbers come back around. So yes, I recently found out from Leon that we have members that have membership for $35 a year because they took advantage of when I still don't remember ever having membership that was $35 for the year, but it's Leon has proven me wrong.
Yeah, when we first started, if you go to ianow.com, you can take advantage of the discount. But you see, we have Community, Insider, and Panther. When we first started, July of last year, first membership Community was $35 for the year, and we did that because we were like, "Yo, everyone's hurting right now." But we at least want to try to provide some sort of education, some sort of knowledge where people can kind of steer this craziness we're going through and have their money working for them in the market. So our initially was $35 per year at one point.
It's crazy. So anyway,
and they have that price for life because anytime you join IA, whatever you join at, that's your price for life. So
yeah, we don't raise prices on members. When you come in, you're locked in for as long as you want to stay with us. So truly, we mean it. We hope everybody has an extremely safe, joyful holiday season with your family. And we're not saying you jump out there and get in anybody's face like, what are you doing? Like, that's not it. Just a very friendly, family-oriented conversation. Mom, Dad, do you have long-term care? Do you have an estate plan? Who's on the house besides you all? Sometimes it might be a uncle or aunt on the house, and you didn't even know they co-signed for the house. Something happens to mom and dad, the house transfers to them. You didn't even know because you never asked. And it could just be a situation when they forgot to change who was on the title. That's simple. And it happens all the time. Check your life insurance, people. If you've been married more than once, if you, have, more than one child's, parent, like, another 2 children from 2 different women, 2 children from 2 different men, whatever it might be, check your life insurance because sometimes we forget we were in love and we made somebody the beneficiary and we aren't in love anymore, but we forgot to take them off. Talk about it. It's very real stuff. So everybody, thank you for letting us rant. This was one of those that was really, it's close to home for a lot of us. And it's such a simple thing to fix if we can get ahead of it. So if you need suggestions on estate planning attorneys, we can give you some. If you want us to look at your portfolios, there's a service Leon and I will be offering in the future, actually looking at people's portfolios and just giving our suggestions. It's not gold. It's our suggestions, although it's really good. So we're good. We're Leon. I'm done. We're out. You got anything?
No, I'm good. I'm good. That's just everybody. Like I said, have a happy and safe holidays.
Everybody, be blessed.